When you don't set your own price, people cut your value in half. There comes a moment in life when a person suddenly stops. The heart is beating, but the mind is silent. And a question rises from within. Am I really this small, the way people think I am? This question is not ordinary. This is the question that transforms a person from the inside. And this is the moment where Memorable Stories introduces you to a truth of human psychology that most people never understand in their entire lives. Carl Jung once said, "The world returns exactly what you believe about yourself." But what does today's human believe about himself? Most people believe deep inside that they are not enough. They think their silence, their softness, their truth. The world does not understand it. The world does not value it. But the real problem is not the world. The real problem is this: you never defined your own value. And when you don't declare your value, the world cuts it in half. Sometimes through words, sometimes through behavior, and sometimes in silence. When you first lost your value, remember, when was the first time you reduced your price? Maybe when someone made fun of your words and you just smiled. Maybe when someone called your hard work ordinary and you swallowed the pain quietly. Maybe when you sacrificed yourself just to save someone else. Or maybe when you silenced your own heart just out of fear that someone might get upset. Someone might walk away. Someone might leave you. Carl Jung says, whenever you ignore your inner voice, you hand your power to someone else. You did the same. You handed your power to others, and they, at the right moment, cut your value in half. The biggest deception of today. Value drain. People today are trapped in a strange system. It's called value drain, the system of lowering worth. How does it work? 1. The more you do for someone, the less they value you. 2. The more time you give, the less important your presence becomes. 3. The more you try to please, the easier you are to replace. Jung calls this psychic economy, meaning a person has the lowest value where he gives the most. Think. People who reply to your messages after hours, how will they value you when you read theirs in 1 minute? People who remember you only when needed, how will they value you when you are always available? The world believes anything cheap is easily available. Anything easily available is not valuable. And you made yourself easy. Carl Jung's new shadow example. The mirror that shows two faces. Jung says every person has a shadow. Shadow is not what is bad. Shadow is what is true, but we don't have the courage to accept it. Your shadow tells you, your worth is not determined by their behavior. Your worth is in your existence. But still, we suppress the shadow. Understand through an example. Suppose you have 2 mirrors at home. One mirror shows the reflection the world gives you. Weak, needy, always available, always saying yes. And the second mirror is what Jung calls the shadow mirror. This mirror shows your real face. Strong, capable, valuable. A person who is not born to bow down. The problem is, we keep looking into the first mirror, and the shadow mirror gets covered in dust. That's why we lose our value. How value drops in relationships. This part is for everyone who thinks, I give so much, yet I'm not valued. Because the truth is, the more you give, the more people take. And then they get used to it. You yourself teach them what your value is when. When you apologize every time to end a matter, when you hide your pain to make things easy for others. When you fear setting boundaries, when you have no time left for yourself. When you do for someone what they would never do for you. The result? People start seeing you as a default yes machine. And when a person becomes a yes machine, the world doesn't just have their value. Sometimes it brings it down to zero. When you take your value back, the silent revolution. Now think, if I want to reclaim my value, how do I do it? Jung says, change begins in silence. And this is the point where your life begins to transform. You don't say anything. You just change a few things. You stop replying immediately. You stop being constantly available. You learn to say no. You state your boundaries. You put your self-respect first. You consider your exhaustion, your pain, your desires important. Then what happens? The world gets shocked. Those who once considered you ordinary now fear losing you. Those who found you replaceable now fear your silence. Because human psychology says, anything always present is taken for granted. Anything that becomes distant becomes valuable. And for the first time, you are not becoming distant. You are becoming respect-worthy. The Carl Jung example that changes lives, not buried in a grave, but planted in soil. Jung says, sometimes life buries you, not to end you, but to grow you. When people don't value you, it feels like your worth has been buried. But the truth is different. You are not being buried. You are being planted. And every person who recognizes themselves again, who takes their value back into their own hands, sprouts like a seed. Past pain becomes nutrition. Past disrespect becomes experience. Past silence becomes strength. Past behaviors become principles. Where the new life begins. A person changes when they make this decision for the first time. I will define my own value. From that moment, people change, relationships change, conversations change, behaviors change, and above all, you change. And this is the point where the real journey begins. We reach the point where a person steps into the journey of reclaiming their worth. But the real game, the real transformation, begins in the next stage. This is where a person sees themselves, understands their silence, recreates their boundaries, and for the first time in life, prioritizes their own self. Memorable Stories takes you forward from this point, on a journey that will change the way you think. When you become silent, the world speaks. Silence is not just the stopping of the tongue. Silence is a declaration. Carl Jung says, silence is not emptiness. It is information. When you keep speaking, people hear your words, but don't truly value them. But when you become silent, the world, for the first time, begins to listen. Those who took you for granted get nervous at your silence. Those who thought you were ordinary start sensing strength behind your silence. Because psychology says, what remains unspoken holds the most power. From here, value starts rising. When you didn't change, you were recognized. There is a big misconception in the world. If a person changes, they've become bad. No. The truth is, you didn't change. People saw your real version for the first time. Before, you were truth wrapped in softness. Now you are softness wrapped in truth. Before, you silently bore every wound. Now you decide which wound you allow and which you avoid. Before, you were a necessity. Now you are becoming a choice. This transformation is painful for people because they were used to a version of you that benefited them. Carl Jung says, people don't resist change. They resist losing the version of you that benefited them. When you reclaim your value, this is the loss they feel. The first rule of setting your value. Boundaries are value. Setting boundaries is not cruelty. It is the first law of life. Jung says, boundaries are the architecture of the self. When you clearly define your limits, you send this message to the world. Check mark, I can protect myself. Check mark, I know my worth. Check mark, I own my emotional space. Check mark, and I will not let anyone take my power. After boundaries, relationships become clearer. Some people will move away. These are the ones who liked your lower value. And some will come closer because they understand your new value. The biggest mistake today: over-availability. Today, people make one major mistake. They stay available all the time. Instant replies, instantly picking up calls, instant help, instant apologies. All this creates an image. This person is easy. This person is replaceable. This person comes without a price. And anything that comes without a price is never taken seriously. When you stop being available, you become valuable. Carl Jung's most powerful example. The empty chair. Jung used to conduct an exercise with his patients called the empty chair technique. He would say, put a chair in front of you and imagine the person sitting on it who sees you as less, who does not accept your value. Then he would ask, now tell me, what do you want to say to them? Most people said, my value is greater than you think. I am not dependent on your neglect. I am not a slave to your indifference. I am not imprisoned by your behavior. I am not less than you. Then Jung would smile gently and say, exactly. Now say this to yourself. And that is the real purpose. The real battle is not with others. It is with the part inside you that believes you are less. When you correct your value, the world corrects itself. This is a surprising truth. When a person sets their own price, the world automatically adjusts. True relationships become stronger. People who are using you move away. Genuine love accepts your new value. Relationships built on need cannot handle your unavailability. Here, you must make a choice. What kind of life do I want? Cheap or valuable? And the person who chooses a valuable life never looks back. The biggest secret of life. Self-worth attracts destiny. There are two types of people. 1, those who search for value. 2, those who create value. People who don't define their worth spend their life asking for love, attention, respect, acceptance, importance. But those who define their worth themselves attract everything in life. Because the psychology of the universe works on one principle. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. When you become valuable, you attract valuable things. Final lesson. Value is not given. Value is declared. No language, no relationship, no person can give you worth. Worth is something you declare, and when you announce, "I own my value," life changes. You no longer remain the person who tried to please everyone. You no longer remain the person who silenced their heart for others. You no longer remain the person who begged for love. You become the person who receives respect, who is not ignored, who is not replaceable, who is valuable. Final message of memorable stories. If you truly want to understand today's psychology, if you want to protect yourself from being used, if you want to achieve the place you deserve, then you are not alone in this journey. Memorable stories will show you the truths the world hides. If you want to understand today's world deeply, then subscribe to Memorable Stories right now. Because every new video here is enough to change the way you think.